people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this tomorrow in Lombardy, Italy.
It's part of a Matchroom show.
On the undercard of Scardina versus Careless, unbeaten up-and-comer Maria Cecchi is going to be taking on experienced veteran Mary Romero. Mary is still riding high after dishing out Amy Timlin her first professional loss last year. Mary hasn't had a fight since.
This is going to be for the EBU Super Bantamweight title.
Super Bantamweight, that's 122 pounds. That's where Mayerling Rivas holds the WBA. Mexico's own Jamie Mercado holds the WBC. New Zealand's own Sugar Nika Johnson, she's got the IBF. And France's own Sigaling Lafarve, who was in action not that long ago in defense of that WBO title.
She's a WBO Super Bantamweight champion.
This is where this fight is set to take place, in the Super Bantamweight division. Mary Romero can be a handful for a fighter that favors finesse over ferocity. It takes a unique balance of both being the aggressor and the defender to fend off the likes of a Mary Romero, who is a textbook pressure fighter. She's going to come at you.
She's going to come right at you, and she's going to come out swinging.
Rough you up and fuck you up if you ain't got the minerals, if you ain't got the ingredients. I think that's more or less what happened to young Amy Timlin when she took on Mary Romero last year. Amy is a pure boxer, and it just so happens that the pure boxer's kryptonite is pressure and pressure fighters.
The pure boxer's trying to have a boxer match.
The pressure fighters not letting them do that, not allowing them the room, the real estate, nor the time to set up their punches the way that they want to, depriving them of the space they need in order to fight their fight. Maria Cecchi, however, who I've seen in action once or twice, she's more of a boxer puncher, and she's got more of a mean streak than Amy Timlin did.
And I think she's a more authoritative puncher overall.
To the eye, she does seem to have heavier hands than Amy Timlin did. Mary Romero was able to fluster Amy Timlin with her volume punching and her activity, standing right in front of her and crowding her, making it a rough and tumble kind of fight. That might have flustered Amy Timlin, but I think that makes the job easier for the likes of Maria Cecchi,
the Russian Hurricane.
An unbeaten up-and-comer, unbeaten fighter of Russian descent, based out of Italy, sporting a professional record of 7 wins, no losses, no draws, 2 knockouts.
The Southpaw.
To Mary Romero, who is an orthodox fighter, sporting a professional record of 7 wins, 2 losses, no draws, 2 knockouts, 36 years old. To Maria Cecchi, who's 10 years younger.
Maria Cecchi's 26 to Mary Romero, who's 36.
I feel like Maria Cecchi comes into this fight with 1 or 2 advantages. She's 10 years younger than Mary Romero. She's a little fresher. She's a southpaw, and we all know how tricky those southpaws can be. She's a bit bigger.
She's a bigger woman than Mary Romero.
And because she's got a bit of size on Mary Romero, perhaps Maria Cecchi won't allow herself to be overpowered in the clinch the same way that Amy Timlin did when she fought Mary Romero. I get the sense that Maria Cecchi won't be flustered by the come-forward aggression of Mary Romero. She will use it against her.
I think Maria Cecchi's got the chops to win this fight.
She's a bit bigger, 10 years younger. She's a southpaw. She's got a good balance of offense and defense, quite capable of being the aggressor and the defender. Whereas Mary Romero, formidable as she might be, she is one-dimensional, the way that pressure fighters often are.
And it's Maria Cecchi that's got home field advantage, not Mary.
Mary's from Spain, and Maria, while she might be called the Russian Hurricane, she's based out of Italy, where this fight is taking place. So if somebody's got home field advantage here, it is Maria Cecchi.
Maria isn't as prolific a puncher as Mary Romero.
Mary Romero is the busier puncher, though Mary lacks technique. Mary lacks form. She often loses it when putting punches together and coming forward. She's not as coordinated as Maria Cecchi, and I think that's going to work against her in this fight.
Boy, Maria angles away from the punches to set up the counter. She's got good feet.
Decent power, about as decent as Mary's. They both have 2 knockouts apiece. In this fight, I think form and function are going to work for Maria Cecchi. Maria Cecchi, who likes to scrap, has a mean streak, and looks to be the better boxer of the two with the right combination, the right amount of defense and offense. So I am going with Maria Cecchi.
Maria Cecchi on points is the pick.
And will be her second zone appearance. Maria Cecchi, who is based out of Italy. You wonder that the people over there at Matchroom ain't got it in their heads to perhaps match her against either Ramla Ali or Ellie Scottney. If she makes it through this fight, this is for the Super Bantamweight EBU title, the blue belt.
I get the sense that's something they've got in mind. That's something that they might be working on if Maria wins this fight. And I think she can.
I think she will. Look for this tomorrow afternoon on the undercard.
Gardena versus DeCarolis on DAZN.
In the men's heavyweight division, a bit of news that's flying a bit low on the radar. Trevor Bryan versus Daniel Dubois fight has been set for June 11th at the Casino Miami in Jai Alai. Hall of Fame promoter Don King will return to South Florida for his next event. King has got another fight of action as the legendary promoter has put together 5 title fights headlined by the WBA Heavyweight Championship, pitting defending champion Trevor Bryan going up against the #1 contender Daniel Dubois from Greenwich, London. The action-packed evening is set for Saturday, June 11th at the Casino Miami, Jai Alai in Miami, Florida. In the night, the promoter is billing the fight for freedom and peace.
What?
The fight card will be on pay-per-view, and an announcement...
Pay-per-view?
This still remains a very strange situation. An awkward situation, because not only did Don King beat out Frank Warren for the rights to this fight, Frank Warren, who actually has a network broadcast partner, as opposed to Don, who's going to be putting this thing on pay-per-view because he ain't got a broadcast partner in the United States.
Don King doesn't have a network deal, so he doesn't have network backing.
He doesn't have a Fox or a Showtime paying to keep the lights on, doesn't have a DAZN, doesn't have an ESPN. That's why he's putting this thing on pay-per-view. And what's strange about it is, not only did he beat out Frank Warren for the rights to this fight,
which is strange in and of itself,
Don King's still putting on fights and winning purse bids in the year of 2022. You can believe that. Not only did he beat out Frank Warren for the rights to this fight, but now as a result of that, he's in the hole a little over $3 million.
Does this fight generate $3 million on pay-per-view?
Does it generate a little over $3 million at the gate? Trevor Bryan versus Daniel Dubois in Miami, Florida is a $3 million fight.
It better be for Daniel Dubois' sake.
Bryan recently moved his training camp from Fort Lauderdale, Florida to Las Vegas, Nevada, and had a recent visitor in former heavyweight champion Larry Holmes, who worked with present WBA champion on his jab. The 32-year-old Bryan will be going up against the younger Dubois at 24 years of age.
Oh, Trevor Bryan's been doing his homework.
If he's working on his jab ahead of this fight, he's got the right idea. He's done his homework, because that's how Joe Joyce was able to dish out Daniel Dubois his first professional loss. It wasn't by a compact left hook or a big right hand. It was with a jab. A simple jab, a consistent jab, a judicious jab that Daniel couldn't keep his head out of the way of.
To some degree, Don is working with old Fish Eyes Frank Warren because BT Sport picked up the fight.
They seem to have the rights to the fight over there in the United Kingdom.
Don's still got him here in the United States. This is going to be the second time Daniel Dubois fights on U.S. soil.
Heavyweights are closing in on the current kings of the division, and Daniel, along with Joe Joyce, is leading the charge. Bryan isn't a household name, but there can be no room for complacency. He is unbeaten with a more than respectable knockout ratio. So Daniel will need to be on his guard and on his game in Miami. I am also delighted that BT Sport viewers will be served up with a double helping of boxing action on the night, with our British battles from the Tetford International Arena leading into Daniel's heavyweight title challenge. That's right. There are 2 separate cards happening in 2 separate parts of the world, but the way BT's got it worked out, they're going to have a card happening over there in the UK that leads up to the Daniel Dubois versus Trevor Bryan fight.
So says old Fish Eyes Frank Warren.
You know what they say. You don't coast on foreign soil, least of all when you're the away fighter that's fighting on a Don King card against one of his boys. Daniel has to make it emphatic. He's got to take this guy out. And because Daniel, he still has some problem areas, some things that he needs to work on, he needs to be on his P's and Q's. Don't overlook Trevor Bryan just because his quality of competition has been poor.
And it has been.
The most recognizable fighter he's fought is a very faded former champion in Bryan Stavern. This is after Wilder beat that guy 2 times. I mean, this is well after any of that. That's the most recognizable fighter.
Bear in mind, he had to go through the gears to beat that guy.
He had to go through the gears to beat a very faded Bryan Stavern. I've seen Trevor Bryan in action. Needless to say, he didn't make an impression, and I wasn't impressed. I mean, He might have the right idea, working on the jab, working with that lead hand in order to hang on to his secondary version of the WBA title. He might have the right idea when it comes to that, though there's having a plan and being able to execute it, being physically adept to the task. And I still believe in Daniel Dubois, more so that he now has Shane McGuigan. I like Daniel to win the fight. I like Daniel to win the fight by way of knockout. That's not saying he might not have to go through the gears with Trevor Bryan. Perhaps Trevor will surprise us and really show up and show out to try to hang on to his secondary version of the WBA title. Perhaps he will.
But I think Daniel's spent enough time with Shane that it'll start to show up in his performances.
It will show up in the ring the night of the fight. I think comparatively, Daniel's got a bit more speed, more snap in those punches.
And a heavier backhand than Trevor.
Yeah, Daniel Dubois, he's faced a lot of criticism for his quality of competition, though comparatively, I still think Daniel's fought better, more interesting guys that you can learn more from than Trevor Bryan has, comparatively. I mean, who's the last guy that he fought? A shrimper.
A part-time boxer.
Won't have a part-time boxer in front of him the night of the fight on the 11th in Miami, Florida. I think Daniel Dubois got what it takes to beat this guy here on U.S. soil. I think he's got what it takes, enough of it, to take it out of the judges' hands and dish out Trevor Bryan his first professional loss.
Daniel wins that WBA title. He'll be in line to challenge for the full one.
He'll be in line to challenge the winner of Joshua versus Usyk 2 for the full title, the full WBA heavyweight title.
So look for this on June 11th on pay-per-view.
It'll be on pay-per-view here stateside, and over there in the UK, it'll be on BT Sport. Finally, on the heels of this past weekend's big upset, Dimitri Bivol, reigning WBA light heavyweight champion Dimitri Bivol, said, "It's not my goal to have a rematch with Canelo. I have a goal to be undisputed at light heavyweight. I'll give him a rematch, of course, if he wants. He moved up and gave me an opportunity, and I'll give him an opportunity."
Another angle of this conversation.
We've talked about these statements already from the Canelo Alvarez angle, the Canelo Alvarez side of things. But for Dimitri Bivol, obviously moving down to face Canelo Alvarez for a second time.
You do realize a rematch would be even bigger than the first fight.
Oh, yeah, it'd be an opportunity for Canelo to avenge the loss, but it would also be an opportunity for Dimitri to make that much more money in a second fight. Dimitri, who said, "When I sparred in my training camp, my sparring partners sometimes hit my arm. They were told, hit Bivol on the arms. I expected that. I watched his fight against Callum Smith, and I knew."
He's a cerebral fighter. He came ready.
Moreover, the night of the fight, he was a full-fledged, fully hydrated, light heavyweight. Would it make any difference at all, for Canelo to face Dimitri at super middleweight as opposed to light heavyweight? And being honest, I'm not sure.
Let's make this clear. Dimitri was able to withstand Canelo's punches because he's a light heavyweight.
We see what those same punches did to Callum Smith at 168 pounds. Could the same fate await Dimitri if the rematch takes place there, if the rematch takes place at super middleweight?
A lot of people don't want to account for the size differential.
A lot of people don't want to account for the fact that Dimitri was more durable than those guys at 168 pounds. He was able to take the power and take the punches because he's a fucking light heavyweight.
I don't want to say it, but he's a naturally bigger guy than Canelo.
Dimitri Bivol is. Dimitri Bivol, who was asked where should he be ranked on the pound-for-pound list, to which he replied, "I don't like questions like this. I don't know. I just beat the pound-for-pound man, but I don't feel that I take his place as pound-for-pound. I need more good names. Humble in victory, Dimitri Bivol."
I've held out on updating the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list until this weekend's action is over.
The undisputed junior middleweight title fight set to go down this Saturday on Showtime between reigning champions Jermell Charlo and Bryan Castaño. The outcome of that match will be reflected on the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list, along with the outcome of Canelo versus Bivol.
And Valdez versus Stevenson.
I told you guys weeks ago, there's set to be a lot of changes to the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list, depending on what happens. There's set to be a lot of movement, as there are a great number of fights that affect who goes where and why, this being one of them.
Dimitri Bivol himself doesn't feel he's ranked pound-for-pound #1 for beating Canelo.
I'll tell you something, he's a lot more level-headed than Canelo Alvarez's critics. It's his critics who don't want to acknowledge that Canelo Alvarez ventured north of the super middleweight division, north of 168 pounds, and quickly found out he's just not cut out to be up there, at least not the night of that fight. Canelo Alvarez,
he's never had generous proportions for a junior middleweight, a middleweight,
for a super middleweight, much less a a light heavyweight. Perhaps going up there, it slowed him down. It's not like he threw a whole barrage of punches in the Kovalev fight. In the Kovalev fight, you saw that Kovalev was actually the busier puncher, whereas Canelo Alvarez looked to be biding his time behind a high guard, waiting to fire off a counter that Kovalev wouldn't see.
Canelo didn't throw a lot of punches in that fight. He didn't throw a lot of punches in this one.
That was Canelo Alvarez's maiden voyage to the light heavyweight division, and he wasn't a prolific puncher in that fight. He wasn't a busy puncher. He knew if he can hit Sergey Kovalev with a shot that he doesn't see, he can take him out, because Sergey, he's not what he used to be. He's not as durable.
Not as durable as he once was.
The same didn't apply to Dmitry Bivol, though. Dmitry Bivol, unlike Sergey Kovalev, he's in his prime.
So he can take the shots. He can stand up to the power.
Canelo Alvarez couldn't hit him with a clean counter as easily as he hit Sergey Kovalev, and he couldn't break his guard, break it down, the way he did Callum Smith's at 168 pounds.
And for this, a lot of people are criticizing him like he was never no good.
Relishing the opportunity to use buzzwords like he was exposed.
Exposed? What was exposed? That Dimitri's bigger and he can take the punches?
That needed exposing? I thought we all knew that already. At least I did. I figured this fight's gonna go the distance. Canelo probably doesn't knock this guy out. Maybe he can out-volume him and out-fight him, but put a dent in him. I was expecting a 12-round fight, and that's what we got, but I wasn't expecting it would be Dmitry with his hand raised. As it stands, Dmitry upset the apple cart for Canelo, and now everybody's turning against Canelo, criticizing him. And to that, Dmitry Bivol stated he still has 4 belts, and he is a champion in 4 weight classes. He's a great fighter. He's a legend still. Canelo haters are just hating now, but he's still one of the best, and I respect him.
What's not to respect? He's a naturally smaller fighter that had the cojones to go to light heavyweight and test his mettle.
And because he lost, he's now subject to criticism. In truth, you have to look at who the critics are and what their real motives, what their real agenda is. There's a lot of people that are unhappy that Canelo Alvarez, at least for right now, he's the face of boxing. They would prefer that someone else be that face.
But nobody else generates the interest and revenue that he does.
None of those guys these critics like to prop up. Not a single one of them rivals Canelo Alvarez's marquee value. If and when he returns, whether it's against Dmitry Bivol or Gennady Golovkin, what do you think is going to happen?
It'll still be the biggest fight in boxing at that time.
Whether it's against Gennady Golovkin or Dmitry Bivol, it will blow anything else happening at or around that time out of the water, because whether you like it or not, he's still the face of boxing.
You know that his fans don't care about unbeaten records.
Him losing a fight is a setback, yes, but it's not the end. Obviously, his stock's taken a hit, and it wouldn't help him none if he fought Dmitry for a second time and lost to him again. No, that wouldn't help.
But we don't know right now that that's what he's going to do. We don't know right now if that's what's going to happen.
If he decides to proceed with the Gennady Golovkin trilogy, that'll help him get back in the winner's bracket, get back to his winning ways, and that'll still be a bigger fight than anything else happening at or around that time.
Whether you like it or not.